Kevin Hancock, welcome to the Real Clear Values podcast.
Tom, hello. It's great to be with you.
Kevin, you are the CEO of Hancock Lumber Company, and your story is a fascinating one. I know you've spoken with other people about this as well, but when you and I connected through a mutual friend, Connie Whitman, it was particularly interesting to me to learn more about your story, because there's a lot in your story about leadership as a CEO, about how to be a leader, how to be a CEO more effectively, that I think a lot of people can learn from, especially in relation to values and that side of things. So, Kevin, just to kind of start things off, to set the scene, I'd love to talk a little bit about your company itself and the heritage of your company. Tell us a little bit about Hancock Lumber Company before you took on the role of CEO.
Sure. So our company is old by American standards, maybe not so old by British or European standards, but our company goes back to 1848. So before the first cannonball was fired in the U.S. Civil War, and I'm part of the sixth consecutive generation of my family to work for and help lead the company. And we're an integrated forest products and lumber company. So we own timberland and we grow trees, and then we have sawmills and we manufacture lumber that we ship all over the world. And then in New England, here in the States, we have a dozen lumber yards that supply a full line of building materials to professional builders and homeowners. So 15 sites across New England, and there are about 700 people who work at the company, are part of the team.
So it's a pretty decent sized operation. And even though you say that it's old by American standards, I actually think that an 1848 inception date should be pretty old by any standards. Companies come and go all the time, don't they? And the fact that you've got such a large, healthy operation that's lasted for so long, I think that speaks volumes about the way the company was established, the way that it was set up. So tell us a little bit about that then, Kevin. What's the company like as you've known it throughout history? And what's been the guiding principles besides just dealing with lumber and dealing with tradespeople and your internal staff as well?
Sure, that's a great question. Number of ways I could answer that, but it makes me think about the original business that we're in, which is the growing of trees. So the primary species of tree that grows on our land is the eastern white pine. They were actually um, used by the British Navy way back when from masts on sailing ships. But I mentioned the pine tree for this reason. It takes 80 to 100 years to grow one. So our company's been in business since 1848, but I often jokingly say we've actually only had two crops in that entire period, which is kind of mind blowing to think about. So,
Yeah.
my point there is you have to take a very long, multi generational, sustainable view of your business to be in the business of growing trees and manufacturing lumber. And I think that long view has spilled into everything that we do when we think about the importance of people, the relationships with employees, suppliers, customers, community. We take a long view with all of that.
I absolutely love that, Kevin. I absolutely love the fact that it takes such a long time for these trees to grow because, like you say, you can't change nature. You can't superimpose your will or the will of the company or the supply needs of the customers or the company itself onto nature. Nature's gonna do what it's gonna do, and it's gonna take that amount of time. And so you've got to work around that. But like you say, it's forced you to think more long term. It's forced you to think more about sustainability. So how do you do that then? Because sustainability is a word that gets used quite a lot. It's been accused of being a buzzword in the business context. So you can't afford to deal with buzzwords. For you, it has to be real. It has to be sustainability in word and deed, in action, so that you get the right outcomes for your own business, for your own lastability, if you like. So what does sustainability mean for your business, Kevin?
Well, for me, it means applying the objectives of sustainability to the human beings that work at the company. I love your question. Sustainability is important in so many ways, environmental sustainability and so on. But I think within companies, people often overlook the importance of human sustainability. And what I mean by that is making sure that the people who are coming to work at the company, the people who give it life, are actually being engaged and valued and honored and treated in a sustainable way so that they can do their work for extended periods of time. A career lasts a long time, and work really needs to be sustainable for the humans who are doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is I'm going to stick with this and dig in a little bit deeper here, Kevin, because this is such an important point. And many companies that are absolutely obsessed with quarterly earnings and tick box metrics will say, "Oh yeah, we do all that. We're focused on the people. We're focused on the sustainability of people." But how do you know? What's the Hancock Lumber Company way of doing it in terms of ensuring that you are genuinely focused on the sustainability of people, and that it isn't just a tick box exercise, that it isn't just something to flash up on the website?
Yeah, I think no, for two reasons. First, we make it a top corporate priority. So there is nothing more important to us than the experience of the people working at the company. Most companies get whatever they prioritize. So if a company's not getting something, it's typically because it's not consistently prioritized. So first, we consistently prioritize the employee experience. But then second, we've developed a number of mechanisms for getting feedback from the employees about their experience. Because to your point, the key to measuring the employee experience is to hear it and be able to qualify it directly from the employees themselves. So, for example, we use third parties to survey our employees on their own engagement experience. And those surveys produce a trove of data, including scores. So in America today, Gallup, the well-known polling company, will tell you that approximately 1 in 3 American workers finds their job engaging, which is just a terribly pitiful, unnecessary statistic. At our company, we know for certainty because we're collecting the data and doing the surveys. Our engagement level runs at about 90%. So 9 out of 10 people who work at our company will confidentially describe their experience as meaningful and engaging. So we've been able to put data and metrics around the employee experience, of which that's one example.
Wow, that's quite incredible, especially as people find meaning in that work. And what you're describing is you're working in the domain of commodities as well. And it's easy to just see commodities as just stuff. So how do you do that then? How do you help people to find meaning in their work, especially in that particular context. So I think that's really interesting.
Well, I think the way you help people find meaning in their work is, again, to prioritize it. So we tell our people that their expectation should be that their work experience is meaningful. We tell our managers and our supervisors that, and we encourage our people to speak up, to think, reflect, and to talk if they're not having a meaningful experience. Beyond that, though, I think it's really about pushing power out so that everyone has a job in which they feel like they are leading that job. They're responsible for their work. They can own their outcomes. They can make the changes they want to make. They can suggest the improvements they want to suggest, and they can see the results of their work. And right behind that comes a business culture, a leadership culture of listening. And we talk a lot about this at our own company. The purpose of listening to the people who work here is not for judgment, it's for understanding. So the big goal is to create a culture where everybody at work feels heard. I like to talk about the goal of helping everybody at work feel trusted, respected, valued, heard, and safe so that everyone feels comfortable being their authentic self, using their authentic voice, and recognizing the power and influence and control that they have. It's just about making people recognize how important they are.
That all sounds fantastic. And I actually really like the first point that you made there, Kevin, or one of the first points you made about helping people to start with the expectation that their work should be meaningful. So you're priming them to get into that mindset. And that, in a way, like you say about pushing power out to people, that is also inviting them to take on that responsibility, to take the responsibility on to create meaning in the work that they do for themselves. And this is one thing that I've thought a lot about in terms of this. You know, some people talk about, well, it should be the workplace, it should be the company itself, it should be these people on high in the company who are giving people meaningful work or bestowing meaningful work upon people. And frankly, I don't agree with that. I think the onus is on the individual to create meaning as well. I think, sure, there are things that the company can do in terms of, you know, from the top down or from the culture and the values and all these schemes and the infrastructure that's put in place. However, the individual is ultimately, they are the only person that can determine meaning in our lives is ourselves. So I love how you prime people for that. I also like what you say about pushing power out as well and giving people that in autonomy, that empowerment to do things and to get things done and to actually see that what it is that they've contributed has led to a result, has contributed to a bigger result. I think that's massively important for people to feel like what they do actually makes a difference, and it's not just some grunt work that they're doing and they're doing it just day in, day out. I'd like to I don't know if you've got anything else to say on that for now, Kevin, but I would love to start speaking about your experience in 2010. And this is the thing that really attracted me to speaking with you on the show, Kevin, because it's really quite extraordinary, this experience that you had in 2010. Tell us what happened and tell us how it changed things for you as a leader, as a CEO.
Yeah. So in 2010, at the peak of the global housing and mortgage market collapse, a very stressful time for our company and industry. At the peak of that time, I began to have trouble speaking, something I'd always done a lot of as a CEO, but really taken for granted. When I would go to talk, all the muscles in my throat would like spasm and squeeze and contract, and my voice got very choppy and broken, and it kept getting worse. Turned out I'd acquired a rare neurological voice disorder called spasmodic dysphonia that affects only speech with no known cause and no known cure. So there I was trying to help our company through the collapse of the housing market without really being able to use my voice. My voice has gotten a lot better since, but back then and for a period of years, there is no way I would have been talking to you right now. I literally couldn't do it. So I say to people now, when it's hard to talk, you quickly come up with strategies for doing less of it. And mine was to answer a question with a question, thereby putting the responsibility for speaking right back on the other person. Mind you, initially, this was not a leadership tactic. This was simply self preservation, trying to work around my voice issues. So people would come up to me at work in that traditional format because I was the CEO or one of the leaders of the company with a question or a problem. Prior to my voice condition, I always gave an answer, a directive, an instruction. But now I started saying simply something like, gee, that is a good question. What do you think we should do about it? He or she would then describe what they thought, and then I would respond a second time by saying, okay, that sounds good. Let's go do that. And off he or she would go with his or her solution to the problem that they saw. Now, having done that hundreds of times, I might have been a little slow on the uptake, but here's what dawned on me that was really beautiful and really powerful and transformed the way I thought about leadership. Here's what dawned on me: people already knew what to do. They already knew what to do, Tom. They didn't actually need a top down, executive led set of instructions 99% of the time. So, what did they need? Well, all they really needed was the encouragement and the cultural safety to trust and follow their own voice. That got me thinking very differently about leadership and really set me on a path of, in the 21st century, our modern age, leadership should be about distributing power, not collecting it, and giving other people a stronger voice. And in that way, I really started to see that perhaps my own voice restrictions, which I'd only ever previously thought of as a liability or quite literally a pain in the neck, perhaps it was actually a gift and an invitation to lead differently.
Yeah, wow, that's really powerful. And again, going back to that idea of creating meaning, you've created that meaning yourself. You've taken that and you've interpreted that incident, that difficulty, that hardship, that challenge that you have encountered, and you've interpreted it in such a way that it can improve you or help you to improve as a leader. I particularly love what you just said there about not accumulating power as a leader, but dispersing power, distributing power. And it runs, I think, from my own perception, runs counter to much of what we see in popular culture and the media and ideas about what it means to be a powerful leader in a business, about this idea of amassing power and accumulating power. And it's like, you've conquered Hancock Lumber Company now. Why don't you go and make it even bigger and take over the universe? Or if you can't do that, why don't you go and hop over to another industry and take over that instead? And you're talking about something entirely different. You're talking about, let's make things right in Hancock Lumber Company to the extent that we do things the right way, where everybody can feel empowered, because I trust the people that are being hired at the company, that they've already got the answers, that they've already got their brains, they've got the skills, they've got the will to be there and to contribute. Let's give the power to them rather than it all being devolved to me, and let's see how things change. So how did things change when you changed that style, Kevin, when you dispersed the power and it dawned on you that people already had the answers. How did things change in terms of the way that the culture was, the way that operations were, and also the results that you got from that?
Yeah, it was quite dramatic. So we've been on that path now for a decade, and we have kept doubling down on the same set of ideas. The first thing that happened, which I did not see coming, but it makes all kinds of sense, is we started making better decisions. In the old model, when a few people at the center were calling all the shots, we got some of them right, but we got a bunch of them wrong. In the new model, where we were giving everybody a voice, we were listening to everybody that we could. We started making better decisions. Put a price tag on better decisions. It's really, really valuable. And
Mm.
that starts building confidence. When people who work at the company see the company consistently making decisions that work, confidence starts spiraling. So that was one big benefit. Second big benefit, which also surprised me at first, but now makes total sense, is our accuracy, efficiency, and productivity statistically went through our roof. I, my worry with distributing power and giving everybody a voice is what happens to best practices, corporate discipline, all of that. Well, what we found is it got dramatically better. And I believe the reason why is simple. People are much more apt to authentically support that which they help to create. And because people were participating in decisions, often making the decisions, the buy-in just got much deeper. So we were making better decisions. We were getting deeper buy-in and alignment. People were having great work experiences. And then one really cool outcome of that is our profit performance just took off. I'm going to share this for the sake of the idea, not to self-serve our company, but it's
Oh,
just
go
so
ahead.
dramatic. We ended up um, we ended up making more money from 2011 to 2020 than we did from 1848 to 2010. And we've been a really
Wow.
good, solid company. But what
Wow.
I love about that is that profit performance for us was a really cool and important outcome of a higher calling. So
Mm.
the focus was to allow employees to thrive at work. The company then ended up soaring on the wings of thriving employees at work.
Wow.
So the company's performance got better by putting the people who work at the company first.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that's absolutely incredible. That really is remarkable. I mean, if you put that on a bumper sticker or a tagline somewhere, if you were set, you know, if you're selling that idea, the idea of how to approach leadership and how to disperse power and how to give the people at the coal face or the respective coal faces the decision making authority and power, that says a hell of a lot. And in fact, it says so much that almost anybody interested in business is going to want to look into that and want to learn more about that. So that's the business side of things. But you didn't stop there, did you, Kevin, in terms of this journey about empowerment and giving a voice to the voiceless? You didn't stop there, did you? You didn't, because you'd realized that you were lacking a voice yourself in that situation through no fault of your own. It was something that was kind of thrust upon you. You found meaning in that circumstance for yourself, but you wanted to learn more about that, didn't you? So So tell us a little bit more about your journey in terms of learning more about those who don't have a voice and what you took from them.
Yeah. So again, when you are not talking all the time, you end up listening more. And the voice I started hearing more authentically, Tom, was my own. And one of the voices I started hearing more authentically, and I realized that I had gotten too caught up in my role as CEO and really had other facets of who I was that were wanting to manifest. I didn't know how that was going to play out, but I'd always had a love affair with the American West and particularly American history in the second half of the 19th century when America's Western expansion and manifest destiny ran into the Plains Indian tribes. I was fascinated by that period. Anyway, in October of 2012, I picked up a copy of National Geographic, and the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation was the cover story. Pine Ridge is the biggest, most historic, today the poorest, and most disenfranchised of all the Sioux reservations on the northern American plains. And I read that story and was just swept away and said to my wife in an instant upon completing reading it, I said, I'm going to go there. I want to see what life is like for the people who live there. I had no idea where that would take me, but one trip became two, two became three. I've now been there over 24 times. I'm going back next week. Have taken two Lakota names, but here was the connection. There, um, I encountered an entire community that did not feel fully heard, that felt as if their authentic voice had been marginalized. So I put together my own voice condition experience at Hancock Lumber with my time on this remote, disenfranchised reservation. And I had what I've come to describe as five personal learnings. First, because of my own voice condition, I actually knew what it was like to not feel fully heard because I often couldn't say what I wanted to say. Second, at Pine Ridge, I realized there were lots of ways for humans to lose a piece of their authentic voice in this world. Third, that actually got me thinking, Tom, about the very meaning or purpose of a human life on Earth. And in that context, I pondered, well, perhaps it's to self actualize. Perhaps the one thing all humans have in common is we're just here trying to know our inner authentic voice, self, and identity, and to know it, to love it, to embrace it, and to bring it forth and gift it to humanity, to those around us. Maybe that's the purpose of a human life. So then I said to myself, well, if that is the purpose, what role have leaders historically played to support that journey? And I concluded that while humanity's had some exceptional leaders, in total, leaders had probably done more to limit, restrict, direct, manage, and exploit the voices of others rather than liberate them. And that's when this epiphany hit me that my voice condition was an invite to try to reverse that model. And because I was the CEO of a company, I had the opportunity to not just ponder this, but to actually uh, try it. And my passion since has been either at work or in a disenfranchised community like on the Pine Ridge Reservation to try to help people reclaim their authentic, powerful, sacred voice that dwells equally within us all.
Wow, that's very powerful. There's a lot of powerful things to think about there and reflect on, Kevin. And it's certainly worth bearing in mind that everybody has that. And this is something I talk about in my own work as a mentor, is that everybody has that unique, authentic voice, and everybody can create something that is unique themselves through which to make a unique contribution, and or contributions, because it's going to be different in each context. I absolutely love what you're saying there about the sacredness of that voice as well, because for me, as I read it, it is sacred. It comes from, it's transcendent. It comes from beyond just, you being the sum of your parts, so to speak, or your DNA, or what your parents were, or anything like that. I think everybody comes out different for one way or another, and that difference is that difference, especially as people are growing up. I think they shy away from that, because that's the thing that makes them stand out. And if you're in a school situation, sometimes that could make you the subject of bullying because you're weird, or you're different, or you're something else. But like you say, at work, when people kind of grow up and they get more mature, and you go to university, if you do, or you play a trade, or you go to work, things change, and all of a sudden that difference, that authenticity, that uniqueness can really come into its own, because you're dealing, hopefully, for the most part, with mature adults who can give you the time and space that you need to develop that. But I also love what you say, besides giving people the time and space to do that, about not exploiting it, because I think it's very, very easy for people to exploit that as well. And there are people who can make massive outsized contributions, much bigger than the 80-20 rule would entertain, and they're not paid that. They're not rewarded for that. They're not recognized for that. And so what you're doing, I think is very, very important, in the sense that you've recognized this pattern in leaders and managers holding people back. And your kind of mission, if you like, I hope I'm not going too far by saying that, but your one of your purposes is to reverse that and to change it through your capacity. So Kevin, how are you going about trying to change that now? Is this something that's just limited to Hancock Lumber, or is it something that you're taking beyond Hancock Lumber and trying to apply elsewhere?
Yes, I'm trying to apply those ideas everywhere I go. Now, a big focus of my attention is applying it within our company, and that's a never ending job. You can't rest on it, but it's really a universal idea that could reinvent every part of human society, from education to work to cross cultural engagement, all of it. The old model of leadership to me was about getting people to conform. The new model of leadership to me is getting people to feel safe to be their authentic selves. If we have 700 people who work at our company, the truth about our company has 700 voices, and they aren't meant to be identical. They're meant to be unique, but leadership has invested a crazy amount of historic uh, energy in preventing that uniqueness from coming forth, which, when you think about it that way, is it would be comical if it wasn't so unfortunate. It's just backwards. Leaders should be giving people voice, not restricting it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the difficult thing about conformity and trying to impose conformity on people, especially like you say, where you've got an organization of 700 people or so, the danger is trying to impose conformity on people, ensure that they conform and they by the book, and they stay in their little box and stay in their lane. Don't stray out of that. Don't shake the boat. Don't do anything that's going to attract attention to yourself. The difficulty with all of that, of keeping people hemmed in and boxed in, is that it's based on the presupposition that the leadership have all the answers. The leadership know what's best all the time, that they are some enlightened beings that somehow always have the right answers. And like you said, it would be comical if it wasn't so tragic if it wasn't so limiting to the company as well. Because this is the thing about it. It's like what you've identified. It's the ultimate win-win, because you give people their empowerment, you give people a voice, you invite them to find meaning in their work so that they can latch onto that. They can create that for themselves through your helping hand, through your invitation. You're meeting them halfway. They meet you halfway as well. And then something happens, there's some sort of alchemy happens where they start, things go around in their head. They figure out what it all means to them. And then all of a sudden, boom, they start to find meaning in the work. They're more engaged. They're looking at problems differently. They're looking at potential solutions differently. They're pulling threads of ideas from all over the place because everybody's got different interests as well. So there's a massive cross-pollination that can occur. And it's just a fantastic thing from their point of view and their satisfaction and enjoyment. But then, like you say, but those going back to the results of the company since you employed this particular approach, absolutely phenomenal. It's absolutely amazing just how that actually works in terms of the things that everybody really cares about. Let's be honest, everybody cares about the bottom line, everybody cares about the numbers. So many people say, oh yeah, we care about this and we care about that, and they put nice phrases and words on the websites, but in practice it doesn't necessarily translate to how things are actually done. And everybody knows, it's a little bit like an open secret that everybody knows that, yeah, we say this stuff on the surface, that we care about all these values, but underneath it's really just about the dollar. It's really just about making the quarter. It's really just about making the financial year. So this is great, Kevin. I really hope that you are successful in your quest to bring this to people's attention, because I think it's really important that there is the kind of, you might call it the ethical case, the moral case, however you want to frame it. That's important, but also the pound, well, we say in the UK, we say pound, shillings and pence, the dollars and cents, if you want to say that in North America. It's really important that that is brought to the fore as well, because it shows how correct principles work. I talk a lot about principles in my own work as well, and these are things that are like keys that will never rust. What you've been talking about today, about meaning in work, about power dispersal, about authenticity, about people having self-sovereignty to create better outcomes. These, as I see them, they are keys that will never rust. It's not based on a fad. It's not based on some form of political correctness. It's not based on somebody's agenda. It just works. It's just the way it is. We are meant to come together, to collaborate with each other, to exchange, just like people did in days gone by. The Native Americans did a lot of trading with the settlers for various different things, for knowledge, know-how, how to cross a river in a canoe and things like that, but also in terms of supplies as well. So if we could apply that and say, okay, right, we do need each other, and we don't have to be in dire straits to realize that we need each other, maybe we could get a lot further forward. So Kevin, let's assume right now that there are some business leaders who are listening to this podcast, are listening to our conversation and thinking, okay, this all sounds good. Maybe I'd like to try some more of this and create an environment in my workplace that is more conducive to people having meaning, to having that sense of safe space where they can be authentic, where they can create more, contribute better outcomes. What would you tell these business leaders who are listening, who want to get into this more, who want to disperse power, try things a different way? What advice would you give them about how they can start to do that in a meaningful way?
Great question. I would say it starts with making it safe for people to say what they actually think, and for a work culture to become safe that way, the leaders have to show restraint in how they respond. Prior to my voice condition, I realized upon reflection that I usually was listening to judge what someone else was saying. And I would either affirm it by saying, yes, that's right, or disaffirm it in some way. Today at our company, all we try to do when we listen is confirm understanding. So today in a Hancock Lumber huddle where people are sharing perspectives, what you would hear the leader or facilitator or manager say when someone finished. It's simply, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. I don't need to affirm it or disaffirm it. You just spoke your truth. And thank you for speaking your truth. And when the executive starts making it safe for the people working with him or her to say what they think, and that is sustained, that will ripple through the entire organization, which has really quickly led me to, take on another big subject with this, which is, why has work historically been stressful? Why has it been emotionally fatiguing? Why has it been unsafe? It doesn't have to be that way. We have a very competitive, aggressive company. But one of my goals is essentially, you can't get in trouble. And I mean, of course, you can do things that would be so outside the values that you would have a problem. But generally, for those great people who show up every day doing their work, getting in trouble is just a really silly idea, and it restricts growth because it encourages people to be super cautious about what they say or what they try. So I would close this by saying I'm really thinking of Gandhi's iconic counsel: be the change you wish to see in the world. So if you want an organization that listens, become a better listener. If you want an organization that disperses power, show restraint in your leadership. And restraint to me means having the power to make a decision right now, but not using it. Having the patience for the team to build a consensus that has authentic buy-in.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea of being the change, being the exemplar, not just sitting there on your proverbial throne dishing out orders, but instead actually showing people through behavior. And this might be the third time that I'll share this quote on this podcast so far, but I love what I think it was Emerson said when he said, I cannot hear what you're saying because what you're doing is ringing so loudly in my ears. And that is absolutely spot on in relation to values. Anybody can say what their values are. Anybody can put anything on the website and make it official, but it's only really official in the eyes of the observers, the eyes of the people who are being led, the eyes of the customers, if the behavior matches. That's what people are looking at. They're really looking at that behavior. So, Kevin, I've absolutely loved this conversation. Just in closing, is there anything that you are offering that leaders could get involved with, that how they could learn more from your work or from your principles? Is there anything that you'd like to direct people to?
Yes, two places, Tom. Thank you. First, I have written a book on this very topic that we're discussing today. That book is titled "The Seventh Power: One CEO's Journey into the Business of Shared Leadership." And you can find that book on Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com or anywhere books are sold. And second, I have a website dedicated to this cause titled "The Business of Shared Leadership." The Business of Shared Leadership. And if you go to that site, you'll see tons of resources on this topic. And if interested, you can reach me directly there as well.
Fantastic. Well, I'll certainly be digging further into that, Kevin. I did have a look before we came on the call, and after we'd spoken previously, just to say hi to each other and become acquainted somewhat. I've loved this conversation. I love the work that you're doing. I love the principles that you are applying, that you are living, that you are sharing with other people. And I wish you all the very best in the rest of your work, Kevin. Thank you for being on the Real Clear Values podcast.
Thank you. It was my pleasure, Don.